All right. Yesterday I said howdy doody. We're not going to do howdy doody anymore. So welcome to the Virtual Campfire. My name is Sydney Williams, and tonight is campfire number 11. We have some great guests tonight. We have Strout, who's the Chief Marketing Officer at W2O Group and is on my personal board of directors and also on the literal board of directors here at Hiking My Feelings. So we're going to be chatting about mentorship and resurrecting a talk that we gave at South by Southwest back in 2011. Oh my God, I'm getting old. We also have Carlos Bérruz here, who is the founder of Everyone's Hike, which has organized some of the biggest group hikes I've ever seen in Southern California. So we're really excited to chat with him. And I think we might have MJ. MJ's got some stuff going on at home. So I'm not sure if she's going to be able to make it tonight. If she isn't, then we say thank you for all of your support. Walkshop is one of our sponsors, and we're looking forward to sharing a little bit more about what they've got going on. But if she isn't able to make it, then thank you anyway. So we love you. As you guys know, we've been doing some openings with updates on Black Lives Matter and everything that's going around the country. And today would have been Breonna Taylor's 27th birthday. So on my screen, I'm going to share some action items for how you can help find justice for Breonna. And the first one, we're just going to put up this picture. So today is a campaign recognizing June 5th, 2020 as a day of action to bring justice for Breonna Taylor, who was murdered by police in Louisville, Kentucky. So today would have been her birthday. And here's some action items that you can take to help bring justice for Breonna. And while these are up on screen, we're just gonna turn off our cameras, turn off our audio, and just have a moment of silence for her. So thank you in advance for everybody who's here. So here's some ways that you can help bring justice for Breonna. All right then. So thank you everybody for your kind words and your thoughts and your action and everything you've been doing this week. We've been really impressed by how everybody's showing up. I know this isn't easy. I know a lot of us that are new to using our voices for good are feeling like, how do we contribute to this conversation? What can we say? The fact that you're using your voice is a great start, and it doesn't just stop at social media posts. So look for resources, look for ways to help. There's plenty of information out there. If you guys have questions, comments, if you're looking for additional resources, send us a message via our website, hit us up on Instagram. We've been sharing a lot of content and amplifying Black voices this week. So if you have questions about ways to get involved, we're more than happy to point you in the right direction. So tonight we're going to be reading from chapter 10. This is one of my favorites. It's called You Don't Need the Money. So if you weren't here yesterday, we left off with me trying to fill the first big order that we got for the startup that I worked at after I left agency life. So I had just realized that I was really kind of tired of killing myself for beauty products, because that's why I was so stressed out and getting sick. And we just discovered that the pallet wasn't going to be picked up until Monday. So if you're following along at home, we're on page 127. And this is chapter 10, You Don't Need the Money. My professional rock bottom happened on April 20th, 2018. We were working to get the second pallet ready for the big order, and I was juggling inventory issues at the warehouse for the big e-commerce order. This was the biggest shit show I had ever been a part of. Molly had authorized more and more inventory for the sale, high on the success of the sale and the traction we were getting. To compensate for the additional inventory we needed to create, we paid a premium for ingredients, containers, and expedited shipping to get it all here on time. We called the warehouse and had them hold all shipments for 10 days while we tried to get caught up on inventory. Every time we sent more items, it wasn't enough. So we'd repeat the cycle. Rush order supplies, rush through production, rush shipped to the warehouse. Meanwhile, despite the inventory hold, the warehouse kept filling orders. It was an absolute disaster, and I was quickly running out of patience. I got a note from the warehouse that our latest inventory resupply was damaged in transit. Nearly all of the product was unusable. It was the perfect storm. Our usual vendor for face wash bottles weren't going to get there on time, despite placing an emergency order. We found an alternative vendor, paid a higher price for the bottles, rush shipped them, filled the bottles with the expensive ingredients we rush ordered, and then realized the bottles didn't have locking mechanisms on the pump to keep the lid from, to keep the product from leaking on the way to the warehouse. We had zero options at that point, so we packaged the bottles as best we could, tried to pad it enough to keep the bottles upright, and then overnighted that order to the tune of $800 to get it to the warehouse on time. It didn't work. They leaked. On top of that, the leaking face wash also stripped most of the other products of their labels, so what wasn't broken wasn't labeled. Before I closed my computer, I got a Slack message notification. It was Molly's assistant. Considering the confusion on the pallet dates the first time, I had asked her assistant to get clarity from the national retailer. Was the date on the order the date they were sending a truck to pick up the pallet? Was it the date the product needed to arrive in the warehouse? Was that an in-store by date? The date we shipped the pallet was the day the product was due at their warehouse. I closed my computer, feeling the sensation of heavy weight on my chest that happens before I have a panic attack. I'd been having them enough to know when it was about to come and how bad it would be, and this one was going to be a doozy. On one of the last panic attacks I had, she kept asking me questions. I was having a hard time processing what was happening in my body, and there was no energy to answer questions. The questions were making my brain short circuit and exacerbated the panic attack. Due to the prevalence of panic attacks we were having lately, Molly and I had established a communication process. If I was aware of what was happening and could remove myself from the environment I was in to try to get ahead of it and calm myself, I would do that. So the plan was to ask for help if you're capable and able to receive, otherwise get out and take care of yourself, and the other person will let you do that. At this point, we were in the final days of production for the second order for the national retailer and scrambling to figure out how to fix the inventory issue for the big e-commerce order. We had 5 people in the apartment helping with production, plus me, Molly, her husband popping in and out, and their 2 dogs. The living room had a very narrow passageway between stacks of finished product. There were buckets of ingredients and stations on the walkways, a table set up by the couch, kitchen table, over the stove, over the sink, in the guest bathroom, a table and chairs on the patio, and 2 more stations in the guest room, which was serving as our office and partial production facility. The apartment was a pressure cooker with so many humans working such long hours in such confined spaces. I grabbed my computer and said I'd be back in a bit. Molly glared at me. She didn't know I was on the verge of losing it. I'm about to have a panic attack and I need to remove myself from this apartment, I said, recalling the communication process we had established for this exact scenario. She looked at me, disgusted, as if my incoming panic attack was a personal slight against her. I felt the panic attack coming, but the look she gave me made me pause. I needed to wrap things up here. I started stammering, one of my first symptoms other than elephant on the chest feeling, updating the teammates on the status of the station I was at. I tried to organize the materials that were on the table and set it up for the next person. I was embarrassed that this was happening, which made me frustrated. When I wasn't able to communicate clearly, I felt ashamed, and everyone else could feel it. "Get out of here," she hissed. I literally just said, "That's what I'm doing, Molly. Just let me collect my things." I could feel her eyes on me burning into my back as I navigated around and over piles of product. I could feel her frustration building, and she may as well have been tapping her toe. "What's your deal?" she pressed. I took a deep breath. We had just discussed how we would navigate a situation like this, and pressing the way she just did was not part of the plan. I succumbed to my frustration and rage and felt the trauma tornado take over. "I'm a type 2 diabetic on the verge of financial ruin, Molly." There it was. Every fear I had about this job and my ability to handle it was out there on the table for every person who was in this room to witness. I explained that my blood sugar was on the rise, that I was overwhelmed, that I had extended nearly all of my personal credit for these orders and I still hadn't been reimbursed or paid a paycheck. And on top of all of that, these orders we've been slaving over are either damaged or late. I was alarmed by how quickly everything was melting down and how little concern there seemed to be for this on her end. I also said I wouldn't be funding anything else for this company. The look in her eyes was one I had seen before, a mix of rage, disgust, impatience, and a general air of, "You're a problem that needs to be fixed." I had seen this look in my dad's eyes growing up, and that sent me on another spiral, feeling like a little girl getting scolded. I left shortly after that, feeling physically hot with rage. Was that the best way for me to advocate for myself? Probably not, but I had never actually articulated my fears or my needs in such a way. And even though it wasn't graceful, I felt proud of myself. I knew my panic attacks well enough to know when they were coming. I knew how my brain gets scrambled during a panic attack, and I was able to create a communication process that would hopefully alleviate all the additional stress I put on myself when I feel shame for not being able to communicate clearly. This was such a jump from the panic attacks I had when I worked at the agency. Those panic attacks felt like they came out of nowhere because I didn't know the signs. And the surprise of the attack plus the energy drain from the attack itself would wipe me out for an entire day, if not 2 days. While I'd rather not have so many panic attacks that I can clearly identify the symptoms, I was thankful for that level of awareness. But this amount of anxiety wasn't healthy, normal, or sustainable. I needed a reset button. I remember that I had some unfinished business with the Trans Catalina Trail, and even if I couldn't walk right for a few weeks after that first hike, I knew it would help me clear my mind. Barry and I had promised each other that we would do the whole trail again someday, and I wanted someday to be tomorrow. I looked at the calendar and figured we could do our second attempt at the TCT for my 33rd birthday during the first week of June. At that point, the big orders would have shipped, the dust would have settled, and it would be a good time for me to take a break to walk across the island and hit the reset button. After my reaction earlier, it was abundantly clear that I needed some nature therapy. Worst case scenario, my trauma tornado would get me fired and I probably wouldn't even be at the company come June, so there'd be nothing in my way of fully experiencing whatever the trail had to offer me this time without having to rush back to work. For the next week, I worked from home, handling office type work while the team cranked away on production for both orders. Molly was getting ready to go on a road trip around the LA area, pitching different angel investors, and I was managing everything else to give her space to prep. When pitch week came, I started going back to the apartment to keep an eye on production and make sure the orders were coming along swiftly. Not being in the physical production space had done wonders for my sanity. My blood sugar readings were back to normal while I was working from home, and they were great during pitch week despite the additional workload. When Molly returned, things got wild again. We ended up canceling all the orders from the big e-commerce sale because we couldn't fill the orders and we were losing on the money on the deal with all of the inventory issues. We had a list a mile long of our regular customers who were waiting on orders while we were trying to figure out that whole situation. Everything started moving quickly again. I still hadn't been reimbursed for the orders I had funded, and the 2 paychecks I received had a hold on them due to insufficient funds in the company bank account. The panic attacks returned. Fortunately, I had an outlet for all of this. I was enrolled in improv classes at Finest City Improv when all of this was going down, and my classmates became my chosen family. I hadn't found community like this since I was skydiving, and even though things were stressful for me professionally, my social life was a massive source of inspiration. The class was held on Sunday, and that theater became my church. Our class was in the theater itself, not in the classroom, so for the duration of our 7 weeks together, we got tons of stage time. One night, the owner of the theater had a bon voyage party, as she was leaving San Diego to sail up the East Coast for the summer. I met some of my classmates at the theater and settled in for a great show. Over the course of the evening, I watched as some of the house improv teams, instructors, the owner herself, and folks from the audience got on stage to play. They made up special games, some of the acts were scripted, and in general, it was a hilarious and powerful time. When it came down to the part where everyone shared how the theater owner and this community had impacted their lives, I braced myself. I was overwhelmed with emotion. I hadn't even really met this woman, but hearing the impact she made on everyone was so moving. While I was skydiving, I had been to so many memorials, witnessing an outpouring of stories and love and support for the skydivers who had passed away. It was soothing to read in the funeral program and healing for folks to share these impactful moments in an effort to keep the deceased spirit alive, but I couldn't help but wonder if the person who passed away had any idea the impact they made on their community while they were alive. I constantly wish that we were better at sharing these anecdotes with people while they're on the planet to hear them. This night was exactly that. My classmate, the same one who came to help make products for the big orders, was sitting next to me during the show and saw me crying. She pulled me aside after the show and asked me if she could tell me something. Of course you can. She dragged me outside and gave it to me straight. If you want what you saw tonight, you already have it here. We love you like that. You don't need the job or the money or any of it to be happy. You don't need the money. I started crying again. This woman only knew Sydney at her full expression. Improv was my safe place to be me, to be extra, to take up space, to explore my creativity, to feel feelings, and to figure out how to express them in different ways. My classmate was often apologizing for her sometimes broken English since it wasn't her first language. There was nothing broken about this message. I hugged her and cried, thanking her for seeing me so clearly. It's a blessing to have a place where one can feel completely comfortable being their authentic self, and to be seen in that state is one of the greatest gifts on earth. After that night, I knew I had dreams bigger than facial oil, and I couldn't ignore them anymore. I realized my trigger was being in the presence of someone so fearlessly pursuing their dreams and doing whatever it takes to keep that dream alive. I got so spun up when I saw how Molly went after these big orders because I had been putting my dreams and my health and everything else on the back burner. Once I saw that, I couldn't unsee it. I wanted to make an impact and I wanted to make it in my own way. If my recommendations here were falling on deaf ears, it was time for me to go find my dream and chase it. Molly mentioned that we needed to have a conversation about what happened on the 20th, but kept putting it off. After we canceled the big e-commerce order, I kept working from home, offering to come in to help with production if needed, and she told me that she had it under control. When it came time to do the pallet for the second order from the national retailer, I felt like a stranger among the group. The other girls were distant, and Molly was too. Later that week, she said that she was ready to have a call about the event. At this point, I'd had nearly a month to reflect on what happened, how I'd reacted, what I'd do differently, and what kind of support I needed moving forward. I realized in my unpacking of the situation that I had been seriously triggered, and my default reactions were ones I had absorbed from my father. I realized that the way I show up was learned behavior, and I didn't like how I felt when it happened, so I was in the process of unlearning. As a result, I figured out that when I get stressed, it's hard for me to articulate myself clearly. I thought about what kind of environment would make me feel safe to share and would give me enough time to hear what was said and show up in a way that feels authentic to me. As long as my default reaction was to fly off the handle and overreact, I had to create space for myself to process and feel safe. I also knew that unless I was very specific about what I needed from Molly to facilitate a productive conversation, I'd likely end up in another situation where I get frustrated, feel the shame wash over me, and then move straight into another trauma tornado. I suggested that she says everything she needs to say, and I'd take notes. That way, I don't interrupt. When she was done and she felt like she had gotten everything out, then I would reflect on my notes, ask for clarity where I needed it, and then I can respond from that place. For me to arrive at a full understanding of what was happening and respond in the way I want to show up versus my learned reactions, I needed to have all of the information. Then I would do the same, say my part, uninterrupted, answer questions for clarity, and receive Molly's response. The way we had been communicating up until this point wasn't working, so maybe this would help. I felt like it made a big difference. Giving myself the space to listen allowed me to fully understand what she was saying versus hearing it through the filters of my trauma and learned responses. I had the chance to hear it, let it sit, arrive at my own conclusions, and respond from that place versus jumping in and reacting to each thing she said as she said it. When it came time to talk about the financial side of things, I was firm in my stance. If paying me wasn't going to be a priority, then the funding stopped. I could not simultaneously continue to extend my personal credit to the business while not being paid. I wasn't independently wealthy, and Barry was working a part-time job. I had no savings to speak of. I wouldn't have suggested this arrangement if I had reason to believe I wouldn't get paid or reimbursed. When shit gets hard, you run, she said. She was referencing what happened after I funded the first order. When time kept passing by and the money wasn't coming back to me, I freaked out. I was scared about putting that much credit on the line, but I didn't see any other options. We weren't going to turn down this order. This could put us on the map. Molly already had loans that were deducted from her account daily. Friends and family were tapped. It was a lot of pressure, yet also one of the easiest decisions I've ever made. I believed in this company, and I thought this action demonstrated that. Instead, I was berated for having fears tied to the decision. That isn't fair, and you know it, I responded. She went on to tell me that if I really wanted co-founder status, then I should be okay with not getting paid. Everyone else should get paid before the co-founder, she said. At this point, co-founder was a title that made me feel like I had more skin in the game. We hadn't discussed equity changes or what that would look like as initially promised. Furthermore, it was my credit keeping this company open. I was the biggest investor in the company at that point, aside from the money that Molly spent to start the business. I asked about division of labor, who was actually in charge of what, and she pivoted the conversation. She started talking about running the numbers and how she actually couldn't afford my salary, despite what she said to get me signed on. She didn't outright fire me, and I didn't quit, but ultimately, it was my choice. Keep working and do it for free because she can't afford me, or leave the company. I slept on it, and the next day I called my trust tree, the people who serve as my personal board of directors of sorts. Barry had been right by my side for all of this, and he supported whatever choice I wanted to make and didn't want to sway my decision with his opinions. I talked about the whole situation with my best friend, Kat. She was in a similar relationship with the owner of the restaurant she was the chef at, and it was helpful to hear how she was handling things on her end. When I really needed to think, I would drive to Sunset Cliffs in San Diego and park by the water. Sometimes I'd take a walk, sometimes I'd sit on a bench, sometimes I wouldn't even get out of the car. This was my happy place for the shoot, and this is where I brought my family When I was getting feedback on their transition to the startup, this is where I caught sunsets on Adam's birthday and the anniversary of his passing. And this is where I know I can always clear my head. So I got in my car and went to the cliffs. I pulled into my usual spot right by a big cove where sometimes I can feel the waves crashing into the cliffs while sitting in my car. Today was one of those days. Big crashing waves and brilliant sunshine. The perfect San Diego day. I called Aaron, my longest standing mentor, and told him the situation. I was a bit exasperated, as just over 3 months ago, I was calling him to let him know I was leaving the agency for the startup. And now here I was, lamenting about the situation I found myself in. I told him about extending my credit, as well as the cash flow and quality control issues. I told him what my options were. I think it's time for you to go write the book, Sydney. I gasped. I've been watching how your writing is evolving, and you have such a gift. You're ready. Go write it. I closed my eyes and fought back tears. This guy, giving me a dose of permission that I couldn't give myself to go do what I've always wanted to do, write a book. He said I had survived so much and that it could help people. I was so thankful to be seen in this way. This wasn't a conversation about how I had only been there for 90-something days and that I should stick it out. This wasn't a judgment about how I make poor career choices. This was an opportunity to choose me, to do something I want to do, and to do it right now. This was my time. The choice was mine. I thanked him for his time and said I'd be in touch about the whole book writing thing when I got my head wrapped around what that would look like. I collected my thoughts, put my seatbelt on, and drove home. I knew what I needed to do. Boom. You don't need the money. So, what? He's not anymore. So, that is chapter 10. That is You Don't Need the Money. So what are we doing here? This is the Hiking My Feelings virtual campfire. While we get things going here, I'm going to share a little bit of information here. So if you're new here, we are raising money for the Hiking My Feelings Wilderness Wellness Center. 80% of the funds that we raise will go to us, 10% will go to the American Diabetes Association, and 10% will go to RAINN, which is the nation's largest anti-sexual violence organization. All of those groups are causes that are near and dear to my heart. The American Diabetes Association is on a mission to improve the lives of people that live with diabetes, whether that's type 1, type 2, or pre-diabetes. They're also looking for a cure. And RAINN operates one of the best resources for sexual assault survivors, which is their hotline. They also have a chat room. So if you are someone who has survived a sexual assault, or if you think maybe the one time that thing that happened was sexual assault, chances are it probably was. And when you're ready to talk about that, RAINN is a great resource to start talking about it and get the help you need. So I'm excited to welcome Mr. Aaron Strout to the show. Hey, my friend, how are you?
I'm happy it's Friday, and
yeah,
a nice way to lead up to the show with, or lead up to me coming on with the chapter in the book. I reread it earlier today just to refamiliarize myself with it, and made me smile.
Yeah, so introduce yourself for people that don't know you. Who is Aaron Strout and what does he do?
Sure. I am the CMO of W2O, which is a integrated marketing communications firm that focuses on the healthcare industry. I am a dad of 3 beautiful children. I am a husband. I am a podcaster. I do a show called the What to Know podcast, which is the 4th series I think I've done over the last 12 years. I live in the Bay Area in Northern California, and I love barbecue. I love hiking outside. You'd be proud of me. I don't know if you've seen this, but every morning I walk around or hike around with my 2 dogs, and I have my coffee cup, and on my coffee cup is my proud Hiking My Feelings sticker. So
yeah.
I advertise Hiking My Feelings everywhere I go.
I love that. And that's why you get paid the big bucks. So let's, I could tell my version of how we met, but I'd like to hear your version of how we met, and then we'll jump into what it's like to be a mentor.
Sure. So Sydney and I, as she mentioned in the book, date back, I guess it's 11 years, right? I think we met originally in 2009, and then we did a panel in 2011. Does that sound right?
That's right.
So I was new to Austin. I'm originally from New England. Grew up just outside of Boston and lived in Boston, got tired of the cold weather and realized there were warmer places I could live. And I had been to Austin a couple of times already, or I guess once already, for South by Southwest. No, I'd been there a few times because my sister lived down there. And I was at a company called Powered. I was the CMO there, and we were hosting or sponsoring a party that Mashable did. This is early days of Mashable when they were kind of the hot new thing. And it was up on the roof deck of a place called Sixth, which is right in downtown Austin. We had all these like social media influencer celeb types there. We were scared to death because we were on the roof deck and the weather had been kind of crappy. Ended up being a perfect night that night. And so we're hanging up on the roof deck, and all of a sudden, this woman named Sydney Owens walked up to me, and she had just won I can't even remember the name of the camera, but it's like the
It's a
handheld
flip cam.
and
Yeah.
said, "Hey, I won this tonight, and I'm here at South by Southwest, and I'm wondering if I could do an interview." And did what, like a 30-second interview. I think I had no voice at that point. And I just, I appreciated your scrappiness and the fact that you somehow had made your way into the party. And we stayed in touch for 11 more years after that. And so it's one of my lessons with, picking mentors or picking mentees is making sure that you interview them and or vet them and really see something in that person that, even if it's the raw materials that you can work with, because if you don't have a motivated person that wants to inspire you or that you're helping to inspire, then you can do a lot of like digging in without necessarily your efforts going in a positive direction.
Yeah, I would say that that was probably one of the first things that I learned. So yes, I won a flip cam and I went to South by Southwest because I was still in college in 2009. I was getting ready to graduate. It was my last semester and I had gone to a conference in Detroit for PRSSA, and Penelope Trunk was the speaker, and she was like the queen of mentorship and career advice in that time period. And she was like, "You should go to South by Southwest and treat it like a job fair." And I was like, that's the best idea ever. So then I won this flip cam and I was like, I had a blog and it wasn't really like big or anything yet, but I had just started it and I was like, oh, I'll interview people for my what's your one tip for somebody that's about to graduate college and go into this thing. And I found you and it was a dark interview and you're yelling with your hoarse voice and that's it because we're at a party shouting over everything. I was like, that dude has a microphone. He's standing on the stage. He's probably important. I'm going to ask him some questions. And then one of the first things that you told me was like, yeah, so in a mentoring relationship, it's kind of like a give get. Like you bring something to the table, I bring something to the table. So for anybody that's watching that doesn't have a mentor, but that is interested in finding one, what is a good way to start that kind of conversation with somebody that you've identified that you'd like to have mentor you?
It's a great question. The thing that I'm always impressed with is I probably at any given time am mentoring, 3 to 7 different people. And I'm always impressed when they come to the table and they're well informed. And yes, I'm sure there's probably a little bit of ego that gets involved, but someone that, if you put podcasts or blog posts or any kind of things out into the world, or even if it's about your company, maybe it's just reading your LinkedIn, knowing where you went to school and, articles that you've shared recently, but someone that's taken that sort of step to really show some interest. And I've had some people that I've mentored at W2O over the last few years where they've come in and they've had like a list of questions they want to ask me. I'm like, I love you because, you're really actually prepared and you're wanting to find things out. So, from someone that's looking for someone, I think it's making sure that you don't want to shoot too high, but at the same time, don't shoot too low, right? And maybe you pick out a couple of people. And like you said, you had Penelope Trunk, who was a huge deal at the time, right? She was, not that I was that influential, but she was a very influential person, especially in social media. And I think it's, realizing that you can always ask anybody, but if you do, make sure that they know why you're asking them, make sure that they know that you're willing to commit the time and the effort to do what you need to do. And part of that is, treating it like it's almost like they're a teacher, right? Where you might have homework assignments. What are things that you can do to help them be smarter? What are things that you can do to help them, as you sort of go through life? So the payback may not be instantaneous, but over time, what are things that you might be able to do to introduce them to smart people, maybe make them smarter about certain things or ways or people in the world. And I think it's really just making sure you take it seriously, right? And also knowing it sometimes can be a time-bound thing. You and I are lucky that we've been mentoring for 11 plus years, although I'd argue I learn a lot from you these days. But there are things where, I've had some relationships that have been really just like a year long or 3 years long. And I've done the same with some of my mentors where they were intense for, a brief period of time. I learned a lot from it, but, we don't necessarily keep in close touch anymore.
So, who are some of the people in your life that have mentored you, and what were some of the key parts of that relationship that you now bring into the relationships where you're mentoring someone else? Like, did you learn any hot tips from the people that have mentored you?
Yeah, it's funny. I did a LinkedIn post, I don't know, probably a few months ago, maybe 6 months ago. And one of the things that I was sort of looking back at were people that were powerful and influential in my life. And it started with my parents. And I know that sounds cliched, but I learned a lot from both of my parents, and they were very different lessons. My parents taught me to cook early days. My dad taught me about music and sports. My mom, gave me English and French lessons early days, right? And both of them taught me how to be a good human being and ultimately a good parent. And then Miss Layton, who was my first French teacher, my 11th and 12th, grade, my hardest teacher to date. And I went to UMass Amherst for undergrad and Georgetown for grad school. And I will tell you, like, she saw me for who I was, which was a kid that was relatively smart, but knew that he could skate by at times. And she called me on my shit and was like, nope, I'm not going to let you do that. And actually sat down with my parents. She gave me my first C in high school, and I was devastated. So she had a weird way of mentoring, but she saw me and she worked hard on me. And I didn't realize the mentorship then, but I realized it after the fact. And I am eternally grateful. And this is, I don't know, 30, 40 years later, whatever, 30 something years later. And then, I had a guy named Sean Belka at Fidelity Investments, and he really understood the strategy and the importance behind networking. I had a guy named Barry Liebert, who Barry's a lot of things, but he taught me the three things methodology. So when you're writing emails, he always would insist that it was like a sentence, three bullets, and then another sentence. And he was a guy that was not afraid to connect with anyone from a thought leadership perspective. And so he was the one that inspired me early days to just reach out to whomever, like people, Angie of Angie's List, and other sort of like very important people at the time that I just had no business talking to. And then, the last one I'll speak to, or the last two, I guess, is Bob Pearson and then Jim Weiss at W2O. And they both have taught me very different lessons, but it's been interesting because Bob was very much a similar thinker to me, but, also reinforced that whole networking piece. He was a big thinker, blogger. And then Jim, who's, great business acumen, always very curious about things. He's the one that inspired me to start doing this last podcast, The What to Know, where I've got to interview people like Katie Couric and Chef Aaron Sanchez and Dr. Eric Topol, Dr. James Allison, who won the Nobel Prize Award for Health, a couple of years ago, the women from March for Our Lives, Nicole Hannah-Jones, who does the 1619 Project. So, I've had an amazing run, to be able to
Casual heavy hitters.
well, I've been fortunate to meet some amazing
Yeah.
people over the course of my life. But part of that they haven't necessarily been mentors, all these people I've interviewed, but I have had a chance to reach out and connect with them and learn from them. And even though it's more episodic, it's been something that, I really have cherished to be able to meet some of the smartest and most influential people in the world.
Yeah, man, that is so cool. And I was thinking about just like how I was wondering because like we met back in 2009, and like sexual assault is nothing new. Creepy dudes in offices and inappropriate behavior is nothing new. But has Me Too slash gender equity slash the movement for Black lives, has any of that impacted the way you mentor or influenced any kind of change in how you pursue those relationships?
Well, the simple answer is no. And then the newer answer is it's about to change. So the
Yeah.
simple answer is I have always worked really hard to understand my relationship to, because a lot of people you mentor tend to be younger than you, and to always really think about how do I make sure I am the best version of myself, that I think about, making sure that whoever I'm with feels safe and secure and understands exactly what my motives are. And, almost like a father-daughter relationship. And I feel like you and I have had that a bit where, I've always looked at you. I mean, you're an amazing adult now and you do, great things and are putting great things into the world. But, I have a 21-year-old daughter who pretty well, and Olivia, and I just feel like I always want to treat them, whoever I'm working with that same respect that I would want someone to treat my daughters or son with. And so it's just, always sort of keeping an eye on that and always making sure I'm being incredibly respectful and just thinking about like safe environments and things like that. To your second part of your question, obviously these last, what it's been 10 days, 2 weeks have been unreal, right? And I mean that in like a grave and somber way. And one of the things that I'm actually very proud of is we've done a lot of talking and thinking internally at W2O. We're lucky enough to actually, I started the day talking to US Representative Alyssa Slotkin along with Jim Weiss on our town hall. She's from Michigan, 8th District. If you don't know about her, check her out. She is a baller. She may be president of the United States someday. So, and I'm not even saying that
Great,
lightly.
yeah. Awesome.
But one of the things we've talked a lot about is the whole Black Lives Matter. And one of the things that we have something called an ERG, which we did not have when you were at W2O back in the day, Sydney, but there are these employee resource groups. And so we have one called W2O Out, W2O Women, and W2O Fusion. And the Fusion version is, as you can imagine, diversity and inclusion focused. And the group has been an amazing sort of aid and ally to us as we've gone through this. And one of the things that we did is we sat down and wrote some talking points for Jim, our CEO. It was our head of comms and this woman, Abby Hayes, so Wendy Carhart, Wendy Hayes, and myself. And it was for something that's going to come out on Monday in the LeGrant Foundation, which is run by a guy named Kim Hunter. And it's all about, diversity and inclusion and getting more diversity into the workplace through some of the programs that he runs. And one of the things that we were talking to Abby about is Abby, talk to us about things that are meaningful and what can we start to do better at our company. And she said, one, let's really focus on hiring and getting better at hiring. And we have a great relationship right now with the Newhouse School at Syracuse. And we work with USC and University of Alabama and some others. But she said, I think it's time that we actually create a real, a meaningful program with a historically Black university or college, and we need to actually help provide the curriculum that will help them succeed when they come and work at companies like ours, and then we need to hire them. And the second, which is really important, back to your last point, was she said allyship and mentorship, especially within the organization, is so critically important. And I realized, like, I have actually taken a lot of W2Rs under my wing, and some have been, people of color, some have been women, some have been men, some have been, Asian or other ethnicities. But I know I have not done as much as I could. And one of the things I said to her is I said, it's hard though, because I think we don't have enough people that look like you, Abby. She's like, they don't need to look like me. It can be anybody, but they need to take those people under their wing and they need to protect them and they need to open up doors for them and they need to show them the way forward. That's what's critical. And so we committed to, in addition to some fairly big donations to some great organizations, that change needs to come from within. And that's our first big step, is making that piece better, as well as committing to some other, meaningful programs. But I just thought, that's something I really need to double down my commitment on the next couple of years and ongoing, is finding the right people internally. I am, one of the C-level folks at our company, and I need to make sure that they know that I'm fighting for them and that I'm going to meaningfully invest in their future. And I can't do that with everybody, but I can encourage my peers to do that. So sorry, that was a long-winded answer.
No, that's good. And I'm not totally well versed in the difference, but I have been seeing some headlines before everything started happening in the last few weeks, but ramping up a little bit more now, about the difference between like mentorship and sponsorship. Is that something you guys have discussed internally? Is that anything that you're aware of as far as what the difference is between the two?
Yeah, I'll give it my stab, and I'm actually going to include allyship in that one because it's an important one,
Yeah.
and I actually looked it up because the other day when I heard it, I'd been hearing it. I'm like, that feels like it's different. So, allyship is the continuous process in which someone with privilege and power seeks to first learn about the experience of a marginalized group of people, and then ultimately empathize with their challenges and build relationships with that group of people. So that's not necessarily mentorship. And it does speak to I happen to be a 51-year-old white male who does well for himself. And I've worked hard. I came from a very, sort of blue collar background and had nothing early on, but I am the first person to acknowledge that just the fact that I'm male and the fact that I'm white is a world of difference. I don't know, embarrassed is the wrong word, but I'm sorry that has to be the way that things work in society. And so I'm aware of the fact that I have that status and there's something I can do about it, right? So then to split the hairs between sponsorship and mentorship, I think mentorship is you're taking someone on and you're helping to invest in sort of their career, but it's more sort of on their terms. So they're coming to you, they're asking for help, they're, wanting answers to questions. And then there's sponsorship. And I would argue, I think what we had was probably started as mentorship and it started to move into sponsorship. And sponsorship means actually proactively taking steps to help move their career and or their interests forward. So doing things proactively to make sure that they're getting the right opportunities. So speaking up on their behalf, going to their manager or proactively saying, hey, I think we need someone to do this role and this person could do it. And I'm going to actually really fight and advocate for them. So I think there's different levels of advocacy that you're providing in both of those roles.
I like that a lot. And thanks for that explanation, because that was something that I've been interested in. And I would agree. I would say that we definitely started off mentorship, but lately, especially since I left W2O, more on the sponsorship side of things. And I think actually when I rejoined W2O, because that was after I retired from skydiving, I'll never forget. I was like driving past Mount Shasta on the way back down from Portland. And I was like, Aaron, let's talk about me coming back to corporate. Like, what does this look like? And I feel like in that sense, that was probably the start of where sponsorship was the transition, where it was like you were advocating on my behalf. And like, I know Jim loves Boomerang, so it wasn't a hard hire to make, but nice to have somebody on the inside that can like bring you in and advocate for you to be on this role in this team, whatever that is. So that's great. Is there anything in your mind or on your heart about mentorship that you want to share with the class for anybody that's watching? Like tips, tricks? You said you were thinking about a top 5 for mentoring. What's your end all be all here?
Yeah. So I did write down some, happens to be 5 ideas that I think are good. And I am sorry, because I know I won't compete. I was watching some of your earlier clips and Anastasia, Allison talking about the pea cloth Christmas cards. So, sorry, there's no way I can compete with that from a cleverness and funniness perspective. But the things I wrote down were interview your mentor or your mentee. And we talked a little bit about that before, but getting to know them, making sure that it is a good fit, because just because someone is the guy or woman holding the microphone at the front of the stage, they may or may not be. That's not a bad sort of gut check to do that, right? But make sure that they're aligned with you. Make sure that they have some of the same values that you do. And while you don't want it to be, too much about what can they do for me, but make sure that they do have access to some of the right people and that, they can share thoughts with you that will build you in areas that you need to be built, right? Because, if you go to someone that maybe they're a great mechanic, but they're not great at, building a nonprofit group, then that's probably not the right person to, get your mentorship from. The second one I have, which is, I think, an important one, it's been a very important one for me, which is take the good and leave the bad, right? And so I have one mentor in particular whose name I didn't mention, and it's partly for this reason. It's been probably one of the most inspirational people in my life. This person literally has been a game changer to me, but there are flaws in this person. And there are people that I know that also have worked with this person, and it's been hard for them because they can't divorce the two. And what I will tell you is, with Barry Liebert, with Bob Pearson, with, other folks that have come before, there's always good and bad. We're all human beings. I'm sure there are things that people I've mentored have loved, and some things are like, I can't stand that he does this. but it's being willing to separate those two and seeing that, you know, we are flawed and that there are certain areas, and ideally the good outweighs the bad. And if you're not feeling like that's the case, then it's probably time to find another mentor because that's not working out. Be patient and leave your judgment behind, right? So this is more as if you're mentoring, but I would argue there's some of that, which is, you know, if you're being the mentee. And so that is that, you know, like you just talked about in the book, that I didn't give you judgment when it was your, you know, second job change in 90 days, because I was like, look, you know, she's going through a process and she's evolving and she's owning her own shit. And I'm not someone to say, well, Sydney, you really need to buckle down and be fiscally responsible, right? It's like I could have said that, but that wasn't what you needed at the time. You needed someone to say, let this go do the thing that you were built to do, that you were meant to do. And that's creating this movement, right? Give advice that best fits for the mentee, not if you were in that particular situation. So again,
Ooh, that's a good
using
one.
your particular, you know, situation, I was not in a position to quit my job and go and write a book and live in a van and do my thing. Like I have 3 kids and, you know, I had responsibilities, but it was the right thing for you to do. And there are times where you have to sort of leave your ego or leave your, you know, focus group of one at the door. And then the last one I would say is don't feel compelled to give immediate feedback. And I think this is important because you'll notice I try to do this with you earlier days, not, I wouldn't even say early, but a lot of us have a desire to like fix the problem or give you immediate thoughts or tell you like, this is the way it should be. So the older I get, I think one, I realize I may not actually have the answers and I'm not going to bullshit people. I've made a pact with my wife, Melanie, who you know well, that I used to sort of say things where I thought that that might be the answer, or maybe it's my best guess at the answer, but it wasn't actually fact. So what I've started to do now, I'm like, you know what? I don't know the answer to that. Let me look it up, or let's actually find out what the answer is versus me pretending I know what it is. The other
Right.
is sometimes giving yourself that 24, 48 hours to just process it. And that helps get back to the previous one. What is the right thing to do for this person in this instance versus what's my gut or what's my experience been, so that you can really think about it and be a little bit more introspective and give them the best possible advice. And I would argue that's probably a good life lesson in general. One that I don't have on there, but, and this is a little bit more networking versus mentorship, but I would argue that it can lead to mentorship. I've taken a gajillion and one coffees over the course of my life. And a lot of times it's been with people like you early days where I'm like, I have no idea where this is going to go. But what I'll tell you is meeting people has led me to some really great relationships like ours and like others. And you just never know sometimes where this is. And I'm a big believer, and this is going to sound hokey, in karma. And I believe that it's important to put into the bank account, the universal bank account, more than you take out. And there have been a lot of times where I've needed to take deposits out. And so I've been glad that I've paid it forward and that I've helped people and that I've given people, you know, when I haven't necessarily needed anything from them. And there have been people that are like, oh, thank you so much. What can I do for you? I'm like, either pay it forward or just hold tight. You know, someday I may need something from you, but right now it's just go and do and be, and I'm happy to be of help.
I love that. So for anybody that's in the Zoom group, if you've got any questions for Aaron, if you want to pop on your camera or ask them in the chat, let us know. But one thing that I was curious about is what do you think is the most important thing for somebody who doesn't have a mentor yet to understand about what mentoring is? Because like we all kind of have a different idea of what that looks like, whether you grew up with mentors or you've never had somebody that can help you in this way. Like how would you define it, and what's the most important thing to know before you ask somebody?
So there's probably a few layers to that. The first is understand that it is a tax on whoever you ask. So know that going in, if you're asking them to do that, if they take it seriously, that you're asking them to make a commitment. And so, you know, you either need to know them, you need to be willing to give something back, or you need to understand that there's eventually, you know, maybe they just do this naturally and that's fine, but that's who they are, right? And as a person. As I started off with, you know, be prepared, go in and not just looking for them to solve a problem, but come in with a thesis, right? If you're looking for a job, say, these are the 3 things I think I'm interested in, or I've already looked and I found these 5 companies, and do you happen to have a contact there? Or I'm really interested in how I sort of get started doing X, Y, and Z. And I've done some research and these are my thoughts, but like would love to get your thoughts, right? And so a lot of times when you and I have conversations, you come to the table prepared of, here's what I'm thinking about, but would love to get your thoughts. So it's not just me starting from scratch, or here are the 2 decisions that I think I can make based on this. Does that seem right? And then which of the 2, seems like it's the best path. So, doing things that you can do to make it as easy as possible. And then proactively checking in and maybe even asking questions like, how often would you like to meet? Do you want to meet in person or do you want to meet virtually? What's your best channel or channels? Do you prefer text? Do you prefer phone, Zoom, email, Facebook Messenger, Snapchat, whatever it is? Because, people actually are very channel, sort of dependent, and some people are much better in certain channels than others, right? So making sure that you're working the channels they're comfortable with versus vice versa. So I think those are probably a few of them that I would say that, people should consider. But again, don't be afraid. And in this day and age, I'm learning, also don't be afraid whether you're looking for a mentor or you're looking to mentee someone or mentor someone. Like, let's break out of our current bubbles and like, let's reach across and into new pools. And that doesn't have to be black or white or whatever. It could be, old and young. It could be different economic, disparities. It could be, gender identification specific. It could be, someone from another country, even if they're Caucasian or if you're both Black or you're both Hispanic. But thinking about how you break outside of your current silo and really try to create relationships with people that don't look like you or think like you. Because what I've found is when you do that, it really helps expand who you are as a human being, and makes you, I think, a more well-rounded person. And we know in business that when you have a more diverse workforce, it actually has economic benefits as well.
Yeah. So one of the questions from the group is, have you ever helped someone that has certain limitations in their life, and how did you help them? And Laura, if you want to get more specific, feel free, but we'll see where this one goes.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would love some more specifics because I have a sense that I might know what that means, but would love to know is that they have, their okay.
Oh, cool. Perfect.
Why don't you just say the question that you'd like to say?
I'm going to try and say it without being too emotional, but I'm soon to be 59 years old. I lost my job a year and a half ago. A year ago, I was diagnosed with a brain tumor and have had to teach myself how to walk, how to talk. I'm not allowed to drive. So with COVID and all of that, it's kind of put me at limitations. And with my age, I know that that's going to make it even more difficult. I'm just trying to figure out how to get a job at this point is hard.
Well, first of all, I'm going to give you a big virtual hug.
Thank
He
you.
gives good hugs.
I see you.
True story.
Appropriate hugs, but good hugs. I see you, and I'm sorry for what you're going through right now. So thank you for sharing that. And thank you for explaining, because without that, I would have given you a very different answer. So I can tell that you care. You're here and you cared enough to ask that question. That's a great first step. Now, to answer your specific question, I have helped people that have had kind of dire situations. I have a friend whose name I won't mention, who he's gone through a lot of shit. And he's been someone that I probably overinvested in because he hasn't been the best mentee. He's, more of a peer, but he's hit me up for a lot of help. But I felt for him and I invested a lot of time in him because, I cared about him. And so, yes, I have. And was it the easiest thing in the world? No. It's a lot easier to mentor someone like Sydney, who it's like plug and play. She's off. She's doing her things. But part of what I try to do is I also try to keep a portfolio, right? it's like I might have a couple of people that are really easy to mentor, and I have a few people that's like, oh, this is going to be a little bit more of a challenge. And part of that depends on where I am in my life with my kids, who can also be amazing, but also challenging, you know, with my parents, with other friends and things like that. So I think you'd be surprised. And I would actually argue that right now, people's antennae are up more than they've ever been, especially based on the events of the last 10 days, you know, 2 weeks, where I've seen such a opening up, such a willingness to become a blank slate, such a willingness to say, what can I do to help? Right. And obviously you're white like I am, or at least you look like you're white on camera. But you know, you have needs, and I'm sorry, like my aunt died 2 years ago of glioblastoma. My mother-in-law died a year ago of glioblastoma. Hopefully yours is not terminal, but I know how effing serious brain tumors are. And, you know, yeah, you do seem like you have a few cards stacked against you. But again, guess what? You're here right now. You're brave enough to ask this question and to come on camera. You're willing to be humble enough to admit where you are right now and that you need help. And I would argue that that's 75% of the battle, is to say, I need help. I would like someone to help me. And then I think it's a matter of finding someone, like, I don't know what field you work in or what your skills are, and that's a much bigger conversation, but sit down and find some people. And maybe for you, it's finding some people that can help do a group therapy, group mentorship for you. And it's parts mentorship and part brainstorming. But I'm going to make a suggestion, which is, and Sydney said this earlier, how can you help them? Like, what are your unique skills where maybe it's some other people that are out of work, or maybe some other people that have brain tumors, or some other people that have had to teach themselves how to walk again or whatever. And, you know, maybe some of them are people that are native English speakers, and maybe you can help them learn English during the process, right? Or you can teach them how you got your jobs, you know, early days, and what can you impart from a skill set perspective. But reach out to a few of them and say, hey, I want to test something out. We're going to do like Hangouts or Zooms, or, you know, whatever it is that you can sort of afford to do, or, you know, Facebook or whatever your channel is. And let's start convening on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. And let's talk about things that we can do to help each other and build each other up and maybe network, right? And those are the types of things where now you're not putting all your eggs into a single basket, but you're looking to a group of people. And again, maybe you can all help each other. Maybe you're all in a similar boat, and, you know, you're all sort of sharing ideas and brainstorming. And now you have a power of 5 or 10 or 15 versus feeling isolated. Because I get a sense you feel a little bit lonely and left out there right now. And you shouldn't, right? It's like there are tons of other people like you, but I can tell you have a good heart, and I can tell that you care. And you want to get back to work. You're not sitting around saying, oh, I'm loving being unemployed and I don't want to be productive. You're saying, no, I'm able to the degree that you are, and then I want to actually earn money and be productive and be a useful citizen. So I don't know if that helps or not, but, you know, give yourself a hug and pat yourself on the back for taking that first step to admitting you need help. And I know that you can find someone, and that you'll be able to take some strides forward.
Thank you.
Well, let's do this. Caitlin, that's a great point. So Caitlin in the chat said, Laura, and if you feel like sharing, let us know what kind of field you used to work in, would you like to work in? And then on this call, we'll think about our networks and see if we know anybody that could be an avenue for you, at least as a first point of contact.
I had worked for Kaiser Permanente for 15 years as working in medical records. My next job was working for Abacus and DoubleClick, reaching out to people that had sent out catalogs that were in our database for who might be potential buyers. And I contacted those companies to get their data sent into our company. My next job, I got laid off during a certain period of time. From there, I worked for Wells Fargo Financial for 7 years as a loan processor, and they closed down our division in 2010. 2011, I worked as a CNA in a long-term care facility and in an Alzheimer's unit, taking care of residents. And then my last job that I had gotten fired from was working at GM Financial as a administrative assistant. So there's a lot of different things that I have done.
I think that's good though. Okay. So that's helpful. And what we can do too, because I like what Erin was saying. And one of the things that we'll do, Laura, as part of the Blaze Your Own Trail program is we'll incorporate this into what we're doing as part of like how we help you get back on your feet and find a job that you'll enjoy doing at least. But yeah, so thank you for asking that. And Erin, thank you for your response. We've got like a helicopter coming straight at us right now. So sorry. Jesus.
Yeah, just a couple of things, Laura. I mean, the fact that you've worked for some blue chip companies is definitely a good thing, right? Yeah. And one of the things that you could do just for starters is go on LinkedIn, and LinkedIn has a function where you can look up a company and then find some alumni and maybe reach out to them and not ask them for a job, but just say, I'm reconnecting with some folks that I've worked with over the years, and just leave it at that and see who responds and who doesn't. And then you can gently let them know, say, hey, I see that you work at whatever, or that you just read this article, or that you do whatever, and create some common interests with them, and take that as a next step that you can start to get to know some of these people. So you're not coming out with your hand open, just like you asked the question to me, which wasn't, Erin, can you help me? But it was, have you ever helped people and mentor people with limitations? That was a creative and clever way to ask, a version of your question. And I think if you can do that, then people are infinitely more willing to help, because they don't see you as, hey, how do you help me get a job? And you're like, whoa, wait a sec, let's date a little bit before we get right to the jumping in bed part. And so, that's more toward the networking and the good skill sets there. But, it sounds like you actually have a lot of valuable skill sets, and a lot of valuable skill sets that will translate nicely to the virtual world. And guess what? COVID may be flattening in certain places. This is going to be our new reality for probably at least 2 years, where a lot is going to be more virtual than it's going to be in person. So take advantage of the fact that maybe you're a little less mobile, and you know what? People can't ask you what your age is. And, I couldn't tell that you're 59, and they can't tell that you walk or don't walk or any of that stuff. So take advantage of the fact that virtual now can actually be your friend. And now may be the best time to look for, even though I know a ton of people are getting unemployed due to COVID. There's still a lot of businesses that are looking for people, and a lot of people in healthcare in particular. So maybe that's a door you knock back on, given your Kaiser roots.
And
one of the things that I would
go
ahead,
on,
Laura.
One of the things I was going to say is I look like I'm okay from the outside, but I've brought this up with Sydney and our group in the past. My brain, because it was a meningioma that was the size of a large orange, that they ended up removing. It has caused me, and the fact that they have since then found lesions on the frontal lobe, which makes me very emotional, which is kind of a hard thing to deal with in work circumstances. But it also, because of the injury of the tumor and the lesions being there, the left side of my brain only works like 80%, which that's where my limitations are, is that sometimes I have trouble remembering things. I have trouble finding the correct words. And that's where, to me, it's hard to figure out what type of a job I might even be able to do anymore. I could probably walk up to the Walmart that's by me and get a job there, but I guess I want to be more productive than running a cashier.
Well, I mean, I'll tell you, like, sometimes starting somewhere is not the worst idea in the world. And maybe you do that while you're looking, so that you feel like you're, you're able to do something, and that doesn't have to go on your resume or whatever, but that's your call. And Sydney, I'm sorry, you were going to say something, so I'll shut up and let you.
Well, no, you're good. I was just thinking, Laura, because like I think that there's, and granted, it's a medical condition, so there are some like, I'm sure there's some different rules, and if you're going to go get like a job in corporate America, that you wouldn't maybe necessarily want to disclose that. But I think what I'm hearing is you've got a ton of skills, and what you're afraid of is judgment about your condition and what state you find yourself in. And I really think that we just need to reframe the story. Like, you have survived one of the most intense medical conditions that anybody could possibly live through. You had a tumor the size of an orange removed from your brain. Like, I would lead with that. I would be like, hi, I'm looking for a job. I've just recovered from a massive brain injury and I'm looking for work. And here are the skills that I have. Let's connect and see if we can like meet up for coffee or whatever. But like, I honestly think, because that's a conversation starter, if nothing else, then people can start to empathize with what you've been through and where you can deliver. Because the way the world works these days, I really feel like there's more people than not that would be understanding of that and flexible with that and able to help you curate a work schedule that works with the flow of how your energy works over the day. At least if you came to work at Hiking My Feelings, when I can afford you, like, that's what we're going to do. We'll be like, hi, you work for 4 hours in the morning because that's when you're feeling sharp and awesome. And that's like getting to a point where you can articulate your skills and articulate your story in a way where people want to have you on board. Then all the stuff that we're like telling ourselves doesn't exist. Like, that's all just limitations we're putting on ourselves. You're here, you're smart, you've got a great skill set, and you also have a brain that like sometimes gives you trouble. But so don't we all in some way or another? Like, I'm worthless after 4 p.m. Like, I'm not good. Like, I am done. So I think it's a combination of things, but I think reframing and reclaiming what you've been through is the first step to getting the confidence back to where you can have these conversations like what Erin's suggesting.
Yeah, I think it's just partly there's a fear in me that last year that I was at GM Financial, I lost my job because I didn't know I had that brain tumor until 5 days before they took it out, which we're almost up to the anniversary of that. And I had been having seizures and didn't know I was having seizures. And that is what was causing me to lose my job.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say you could theoretically go back to them and say, you fired me unlawfully, and I would like you to rehire me. I mean, that's just a matter of how much you're willing to take that forward. But I know it's a gray area because they didn't know and you didn't know, but now that you do, you actually could go back and probably have a conversation with them and say, I'd like to have my old job back. Thank you. And by law, they may actually, be required to at least consider that. And again, I'm not a lawyer, but in my mind, I'd at least think about that conversation.
I don't want to have to do that 37-mile each way drive that I had been doing for 7 years.
But here's the beauty is we're all
fair.
living virtually right now. They should be able to let you do your job virtually.
True.
So think about the world in a different place right now. Like, I do all my work from my office. 80% of me loves it. 20% of me is like, get me out of here because it's hot and I feel like I don't, get to move around as much. But I'm telling you, it's opened up a whole new world, and it will continue to open up a whole new world. Yes, there are 40 million people that are unemployed, 43 million people that are unemployed, but the whole workforce is going to shift as a result of this. And there will be opportunities, especially for people like you that have multiple skill sets, that have worked for a number of really big companies. And you have a little bit of a limitation that's through no fault of your own. It's not lazy. You had a brain tumor. You didn't ask for the brain tumor.
You didn't ask for the brain tumor. Yeah, jinx.
Thank you so much for both you and Sydney for helping me through this.
Keep your chin up. I can see you've got a lot of good in you, and you need to just, see yourself for the amazing person that you are. And yes, thank you for asking, Lydia. Lydia was chiming in. I'm not calling you Lydia, but I was commenting on Lydia in the chat just in case. Thank you,
Awesome.
Lydia.
Well, thank you so much. Oh, I love it. So up next, Aaron, do you have anything else you want to share? Anything on your heart and mind?
I think I've said a lot.
It
I will
doesn't
just
have to
say,
be about
A,
this. Okay.
thank you for having me on the show. B, thank you, Laura, for sharing your story. That was like a nice personal touch for me. And C, and I think all the people that you attract are already doing this, but you know, this is a critically important time. Thank you, Jess. It's a critically important time to just love and let people know that you care, and don't be afraid to be emotional. I've cried on 3 different calls this week and got a little emotional on this. It's okay. It's okay to be a human being. And by the way, most of us don't know what the heck we're doing going through this. So also don't be afraid to admit that, like, it's confusing times for a lot of reasons. But if we love one another, and if we're open to questioning things and open to trying new things and seeing people versus judging people, I think this is a turning point that can lead to something really good.
I would agree with that. We have a unique opportunity to build the world we want to live in. So thank you for being part of mine. I
Well,
appreciate you.
same back at you, my friend, to you and your lovely husband, and to your community
I will
here.
tell
This has
him.
been amazing.
Yeah. Well, if you got a split, you're more than welcome to. But if you want to stick around, we got a group gratitude circle coming up after I talk to Carlos. So we'll see.
I would
ya.
love to do it. I actually have 2 dogs that need a walk, and I've postponed them for their evening walk. So I probably have to go and do that. You know,
Awesome.
both of these little puppies, and you know how much they like to be out in the wild.
That's right. Well, thank you so much for being here. And we will see you when we come up in a few weeks.
Sounds good. Thanks, everyone. Yeah, this has been
Awesome.
amazing.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Carlos, bring it on down. Let's talk about everyone's hike. I'm so excited that you're here. I can't even deal.
I'm trying to see. Here we go. Am I
There
on?
it is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
How
you
you
are.
doing?
Good. How are you? Good to see your face. How are you, friend?
Good. You know, I've been listening to Aaron. I can relate to him in so many levels. I was just absorbing everything he was saying, and even down to his walks with his coffee. I was like, that's me all day long right there. Laura, if you're still on, one thing that I can recommend during these times, just as Aaron was saying, you know, everything is virtual now. You're doing everything online now. Maybe this is your time, you know, to perhaps start your own business and be an independent, have your own business. I mean, I don't know how to put it. Like right now, let me give you an example. A friend of mine recently got married, relocated to Texas. She didn't know what she was going to do while she was out there. Let me tell you, she started making these masks. She's making up to 600 of them a week. Her husband would get home from work and they had to go out and buy a couple sewing machines, and they were just cranking away. I don't know what type of money she's bringing in, but 600 masks per week is a lot. You know, let's say I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how cheap. I don't know how. Let's say the cheapest you can think of is what, $10. I mean, it's a lot of money they're making per week right now. And with that being, it kicked off another little business where she's now making salsa. and that's
Okay.
taking.
I
So,
love it. And Laura makes
so-
some of the most beautiful cookies you've ever seen in your life. So Laura, I think we're on to something here.
yeah, you know, and then with me with my background in real estate, I mean, the way my days start is I'm usually online maybe at 5 a.m. daily doing my research on possible investment opportunities in real estate. So you might want to get with a broker because you seem to have some good phone skills in your background. And basically what I do is I talk to brokers and agents, listing agents all day long, and try to secure properties for my investors. So and this is all done. I kid you not, I'm usually on the phone between 8 to maybe 11:30, and that's it for the day. After that is just follow-ups here and there that can be done by email. So it's just a suggestion.
I love that. Oh,
Yeah.
gosh, so many good resources.
Oh yeah, I'm totally enjoying this, Sydney. I'm totally enjoying. Reminds me of the mastermind groups that I used to do long ago. You know, but we didn't have
Yeah.
Zoom back then. We were just all on the phone.
No. Yeah. So introduce yourself. Tell us about who is Carlos, where are you currently at, and what is everyone's hike?
You're welcome, Laura. Everyone's hike started off as a hiking group out in Los Angeles, and it grew. And with that being, I wanted to kind of separate a group and build a community. So one thing that I started doing was going out on pop-up hikes with various different groups throughout Southern California, actually, and just networking, kind of as how we met, Sydney, and meeting like-minded people. I mean, everybody, we all bring something different to the table, but we all share the passion for the outdoors. It's that easy. And with that
Yeah.
being,
So
yeah, go ahead.
no, go ahead. No, you're good.
Okay. Yeah. Well, with that being, I mean, I was going to get at is, I don't know how it was almost like a movement. I mean, you've seen videos and photos of my hikes, and I'm still in awe every time. I think the furthest anybody's come to attend a hike was from Queensland, Australia. Yes, I hadn't even heard of Queensland before. I knew Brisbane and all the obvious cities, but not yeah.
That's incredible. So tell me, because describe some of the hikes that you've led and how many people show up. Because I don't think, like, I'm talking group hikes, and anybody that's hiked with us, like the biggest hike we had on the road last year was like 20 or 30 people. You have done way bigger hikes. So how did that even start? Like, let's start with that. Like, what was the first big hike you hosted, and what was the thing that got people to show up?
Um, well, the very first hike I hosted was just kind of like a word of mouth, just a couple of friends I invited. And just from day one, it was no less than 23 people. I think that's the least I've had since day one. And they were all, I try to make them fun, and I would host themed hikes. So if I'd ask everybody to wear green, everybody wore green. If red was the color for that week, everybody wore red. And the reason I did this is because it actually showed unity. You knew it's like you had a sense of a community, so to speak. And not only that, but whenever we'd show up, be it 30, 40, 50 people, and it kept growing and kept growing, other people would inquire. We didn't get the memo. We did not know that that was the color theme of the trail today. And we're like, no, back then, we're just a group. And being that, I just wanted to build a community, and to the point now that the numbers are big because various hiking groups come in. And we're not a group. I mean, like I said, we're a community, and that's why in some ways it doesn't even have a name. That's why I call it Everyone's Hike, because everyone's welcome. And I before I was hosting hikes at all levels, but now due to relocating and now I'm in Northern California, I just host maybe somewhat slightly intermediate level hike, just to try to get everybody in there. And once in a while I'll host a kids hike. But with
Oh,
everything
fun.
changing this year, I don't know where we're going to be. I don't see myself
Yeah.
hosting soon. Yeah.
So I remember you were saying showed me pictures from like a neon hike or something with lights that
Mhm.
you did at night. What was that one about, and how many people showed up for that?
We've had various neon hikes. We usually host them in the summertime, when the sun sets a little later. And yes, just a fun hike all around. Everybody wears their brightest colors. They come out, and once the sun sets, they bring out their night lights, their glow sticks, and they illuminate the trail as we hike back. And our destination of choice is in Los Angeles. It's the Wisdom Tree of LA. It's in Griffith Park, and it's just an annual event that we host.
I love that.
Yeah.
So has hiking helped you heal in your life? Like, what is your connection to nature, and where did you first establish that connection?
On my very first hike, I'm very much a city boy. Till to date, I'll be honest with you, I haven't camped yet. So, yeah, people are always like, what do you mean you have? I still haven't gone camping. Um, I was taken on a hike, and it was very humbling. And I went, my very first hike was a sunset hike, and I saw one of the best sunsets I had ever seen living in the City of Angels. We're in the top of Griffith Park, Mount Hollywood, and I looked out into the city. You see the observatory down below, and I used to think that was the best view of the city of LA from the observatory. Not till you get up to the top of Mount Hollywood, you'll see what I'm talking about. But I stared out, and I asked a friend of mine that was there, how many occupants do you think are in the city of LA right now? And he threw out a very large number. I think he said like 18 million. And I said, out of those 18 million, how many people you think have stood here and seen this view? And that's where it started. I want to share this experience I had with everybody, with everybody I know. And it kind of, the way it started was, back when we started, there wasn't very many Latino Hispanic hikers out there doing this. So when we put it out there, and it was a friend of mine and it just kind of grew and it grew and it grew. It just exposed people. We would host a bi-weekly hike, and it grew so much that it became a weekly event, and that carried over into we'll do a hike every Tuesday night, and Saturday we'll do another one, and a Sunday we'll do a kids hike. And that's how we just kept going and going and going. And eventually I broke off from that because I needed to move in a different direction. And that was the beginning of Everyone's Hike.
So at its peak, what was Everyone's Hike doing before you moved?
The average hike we hosted was probably in the neighborhood of 350 or 400 people. And then one of the breakoff groups, because it was a themed hike, is we started another group called Dodgers Blue Hiking Crew. And Dodgers Blue Hiking Crew, the most we ever had was just under 700 people at one of the hikes. And that group, yeah, it's surreal. And that group continues to grow. A lot of the people involved in like, let's say, for instance, anchor people in the city of Los Angeles, they're probably my biggest cheerleaders. They're the ones that kind of promote the group because they love it. They love it. They're Dodger fans, and they love the outdoors, and it just keeps growing. I didn't host a hike this year.
Wild.
Yeah, I didn't host a hike this year though.
How do you what are the logistics behind getting 700 people on a trail, and what trail can handle that many people? Is this all at Griffith Park?
Yes. What I try to do is I try to, when I have a large group, I try to only hike on fire roads. I'm very cautious of destroying a trail, erosion, things of that nature. I've never hosted a hike in the mountains, because I don't want to do that. I don't want to bring, so I try to stick to areas where you have a fire road, where it's maybe 10 people wide or maybe even 15 people wide. And usually, I'll have a conversation with the rangers prior to, and, we're all collaborating together and make sure everybody gets off the mountain or the hill safe.
Wow, that is incredible. I just, every time I hear you say that, I'm trying to wrap my head around that. I don't even think I hiked with 700 people total last year. I'm trying to do the math in my head of how many people came to each one of our hikes. And I just that blows my mind. And that was a regular occurrence. And you said it's growing still?
Yes. What the Dodgers group does is that it really introduces, it's really a stepping stone to introduce people to the outdoors. You're bringing people from the inner city that had never been out, and sometimes I have to turn people away because sometimes they're not wearing the right shoes or things of that nature, which I state on the event pages. I disclose whatever needs to be worn, the proper attire, or what to bring to eat or whatever, be it or drink. But I do have a makeup hike where the people that were turned away because, let's say, they showed up with skater shoes, they can come back. And sometimes they're just unaware. Somebody invited somebody that invited them. But it's great because you should see the change. They all come to me. You got some people that, I have to admit, they're somewhat intimidating looking, and they're coming up to me to thank me, and they show up at the next hike, and then eventually I start seeing them. Some of these people had been on their first Dodger hike in Griffith Park, and I think they were in Zion this past weekend. You know,
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
yes, yes. So now people are sending me pictures with them wearing their Dodger gear on different hiking trails. So I'm posting their photos, you know, and it's pretty amazing to see.
I love that so much. So, would you say, because the hike is for everyone, but you also mentioned that you have a lot of Latinx people that come out. What
Mhm.
is, what's the biggest barrier to entry for folks in the Los Angeles area who haven't been outdoors? Is it transportation? Is it just having the time to do it? Have you seen any themes in the people that you bring out that you've met where they're like, I've never been out because X? Like, is there a common thing that they haven't been out and now they are? Like, what's the
I think it's the introduction. They need the introduction. You'd be amazed at how many people live in Los Angeles close to the Hollywood sign and they've never been there in their life. It's countless. Every time I host one of these hikes there, yeah, you know, people say I've been living in Los Angeles for 30 years and I've never come to the Hollywood sign. I've seen it, you know, so things like that, you know, it's exposure. You know, you need somebody to introduce you, and you know, either you love it or you hate it. But you know, fortunately, a lot of people love it, love the outdoors.
yeah. So how are you getting the word out? Was it word of mouth, social media, all of the above? You mentioned some of the, like, did you get people on the news telling people about this
Oh yeah,
hike? Because you said anchor people.
they promoted the hikes. They promoted it on Channel 7, on NBC4, and Fox. Fox. The two years the Dodgers were in the World Series, they interviewed the Dodgers blue hiking crew. You know, the morning of Game 1 of the World Series. So things like that. Yeah.
That is so cool. What, like,
Yes.
what a
Social.
powerhouse. You're just like, and you're so casual about it. You're like, yeah, we get like 700 people out on the trail. It's fine. We've got this massive community. It's cool. Does anybody in the Zoom group have a question for Carlos? And if so, go ahead and pop on your video or ask it in the chat. Um, I'm just dying to know, like, so what have you been doing stuff in Northern California?
No, actually, I went hiking with the kiddos just day before yesterday. We went to Armstrong Woods. No, I
Oh
haven't
God, I
hosted
love
any.
it there.
Oh yeah, totally, totally loved it. I was over Memorial Weekend. I was over at Jack London Park, historic state park. I love that. That was my first time there. I've spoken with the mayor here. I'm in the town of Windsor. We're trying to. We were in the works of doing something before the whole COVID thing happened. So I don't know if we're gonna be able to do something yet. But right now, I to me, I've proven to myself that I can get adults out. I'm a father. I have a 12-year-old and a 7-year-old. So I now my focus is on getting kids outdoors because we're in the electronic era, you know, and you know, you can't get. I'm struggling with my own kids right now, you know, getting them away from either their phones, tablets, or video games. So yeah, sometimes, you know, it's the best thing is how do they say there's no Wi-Fi but you still have the connection or something like that. There's a quote.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, yeah, the connection is strong, right? The connection is strong. So yeah, that's more of my focus now. And now being up here in Northern California, there's so much more to explore than down in Southern California for me. So I'm doing that, but yet I still you know, my roots are down there. I still want to host something. I don't know when I'll feel safe to host something of those type of numbers, or maybe I'll just host something relatively small towards the end of the year. We'll see. Right now, you know, we're all learning, I should say.
Yeah, yeah, we are too. We had some great hikes scheduled for this year that COVID decided we didn't need to go on. So that's how that
Yeah,
goes.
yeah, you know. So
So is there, oh, here we go. Vicky, ask a question. Hey girl, hey.
Yeah, no, I don't actually have a question. I just got to do what I do, which is just express so much gratitude at seeing more Latinos, more brown faces, more compadres and hermanos and hermanas out on the trail, and I'm just so glad that you're doing the work that you're doing.
awesome. Thank you.
I didn't get exposed to hiking growing up. It was a thing that happened when I moved to Colorado, and so yeah,
Yeah,
thanks.
I wish I had been exposed to it earlier. So that's probably why I'm out there kind of promoting it and trying to get more, the younger the better, I should say. You know, I want to say youth, but I want to start them early. I started my 12-year-old at the age of 5, and she just right before the COVID put a halt to everything, she just completed her first 22-miler, you know, and we did some pretty challenging. Sydney, we did all of Mount Tamalpais. We started at Stinson
Yeah.
Beach. We went to the East Point. It was challenging, but it was fun.
I want to do that.
Oh my
It
God,
sounds
it's
like
fun.
an awesome hike.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
People
that's
couldn't believe
awesome.
when we were at the East Point. People asked, "Well, where did you start?" We said we started at Stinson Beach. Everybody was blown away. First thing they looked at was my daughter. She made it this far. I said, "Yep," and we still got to get back. We still got to get back. You know,
I love that so much. So is there anything in light of recent events, whether that's, you know, everything that's going on with the police brutality and COVID or anything else, like, is there anything that's on your heart and mind that you want to talk about, or anything that is like anything that you just want to share?
well, you know, right now with the current situation, how you mentioned Black Lives Matter and things of that. Wow, I mean, I think it hit all of us. You know, I shed a few tears when I was watching the video. Of course, I ended up watching it. I feel for the protesters out there, because I do feel that there's some organized groups out there that are causing the havoc. I don't, you know, and unfortunately, we're seeing, you know how they say it's not news unless it's bad news. So we're seeing the bad parts, be it both sides, because I told my friends there's a lot of great cops out there. One of my dear friends, he's a retired LAPD detective. He said nobody hates a bad cop more than a good cop. Okay, and
Yeah.
and so, you know, and I've always swayed towards law enforcement because growing up, out of my core of friends, either you jumped into real estate half, or the other half jumped into law enforcement. So those were the ways we went, you know. So it's tough to see what's going on. I haven't watched the news. I've been out all day, so I haven't watched to see what's going on today. But Santa Rosa is the closest city towards us, and as I was driving up the 101, there were maybe 7, if not 8, CHPs on the side of the road. And the first exit after I passed them, there was a motorcycle cop stopping everybody from getting off that exit. So I don't know if they had a planned protest in Santa Rosa, or I don't know what's going on, but they were preparing for something. You know, so
Interesting.
yeah, we're living in interesting times. I mean, what have we had this year? We've had the COVID. We had the we have this this scenario with this gentleman. What's his name? Floyd George.
George Floyd, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. We forgot about the murder hornets. You know.
Right, yeah. Also
Forgot about
that,
the
yeah,
murder hornets.
the world is burning, literally. We got bugs that are killing everyone, yeah.
Yeah. I just saw that some Arctic river is running red, and it's concern for everybody. I have to read about it. Yes, some Russian Arctic river is running red right now. So I don't know what that's about, but I'm going to read up on it when we're done. Yeah,
Yeah.
so we're definitely living in interesting times, but you know what? You can also see good people come out, and they say cream rises to the top. So you know, you are seeing good people. You're also seeing chiefs of police marching with people. There was a gentleman, I don't know where he's from. I wish I would have saved it. You know, he was telling the community, he's a chief, and he was telling the crowd he loves them, you know, and he'll walk with them. And they had him on CNN later. You know, now he was outside of his uniform in a suit, and I was like, God, this guy should just be a politician from this point forward. You know, he was so motivational, and I can feel him through the TV. So those are the feel good stories. They're good stories in all of the chaos and havoc going on in the world. There are good stories out there, so one must remain optimistic.
Yeah, I believe that too. So where can everybody find you, and how can they get more information about any upcoming hikes you might have in the future?
Okay, I do have a Facebook, and I have a community page, which is Everyone's Hike community page, and then I also have the group page, Everyone's Hike group page, which is actually more for catered to who's involved, who's hiking with the group, and who's out. You know, if you want a place to post your photos, things of that nature, we have the group page, and then I also have the Instagram. That's pretty much
Perfect.
what I have right now. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. It's great to see your face and great to catch up.
Likewise.
The next segment of our show is the group gratitude circle. So for anybody that wants to join and share what they're thankful for tonight, please pop on your video. But I'd love to invite you, Carlos, to kick us off. What are you grateful for today?
Wow. There, I can't say one thing because there's just so much. One is for family, two is health, and three is just recognizing that we have the ability to do so much more than what we're doing right now. You know, sometimes it lacks a little bit of encouragement. You know, there's a quote by Zig Ziglar, I believe, and you might quote me if I'm wrong, but it says, what is it? It's a moment and a few sincere words can have an impact on a life. You know, and I believe in that. You know, there's people that I hadn't been aware that have been going through something that I might run into in the street. Say, hey man, I hiked with you like 3 years ago. You know, I was going through some dark times those days, and your hikes helped me out. I had no clue. Countless stories of somebody with health issues, divorce, you know, depression. I had no clue they're going through this, but you know, you just gotta put it out there, you know, and be you, you know.
I love that. Yeah, thank you. Today, what am I grateful for today? Today, I'm grateful for the weather. It's been kind of hot. We're up in the mountains, so it's never as hot as it is inland or down at like sea level. But we woke up and we were like in the cloud, and I love when that happens because there's a behind my computer is Mount Cuyamaca, and then behind me over here is just a valley where you can see like 7 or 8 ranges, like rows of mountain tops. And it's just like I could literally see the clouds moving through the property today. And there was at one point when I was riding in the van where like cloud was coming into the van. And I was just like, this is
Amazing.
so cool. Cause we're at like 3,500 feet ish, 3,900 feet, depending on which part of the property you're on. And I was just like, this is just different. Cause after so many, and like, it's total SoCal problems. Like after so much sunshine, it's just so exhausting. But no,
Yeah.
it was really nice to like see like to just be in the cloud and have a little break from the heat. We also have some deer flies up here because there's a ton of deer and they bite and they are nasty little critters and they don't hang out when it's cold outside. So it was a little cooler. I'm wearing a hat and some fleece and a blanket and like I actually need the fire today. So yeah, I'm just thankful for a break from the heat. So that's me today. Michelle, what are you thankful for?
I'm thankful for finally having the time to gather my thoughts and start journaling again. I haven't done that in a while. I was trying to journal during our Zoom call. Obviously, it didn't happen because I was just like in the zone with you guys. But I titled it playing catch up. So I'm playing catch up in my journal. So I'm grateful that I finally got the time to play catch up. So yeah.
I like that. Awesome. Miss Vicky?
Well, in the spirit of the mantra of abundance today, I am going to preserve for posterity my thankfulness for my garden kale. In the pre-show, some of you got to see it in my teeth. But yeah, at the beginning of the summer, and no, not even the beginning of summer, when I moved into this new place, and then COVID was around the same time, and like many other people, I'm like, I'm gonna garden. And I planted this kale, and I didn't expect anything to happen with it, and I had the best plate of kale chips tonight that came from my garden, and my dog got the stems. She loves them. And so, yes, I am grateful for my garden abundance.
I love that. Yay.
That's awesome.
Let's see. Mary, what are you thankful for?
So I'm thankful for finally discovering yoga. It took me too many years, but yesterday marked 6 weeks of daily yoga practice. And fortunately, I had to skip out of this call for a little while, but I was going crazy in my favorite yoga classes tonight, and I just knew I'd be devastated if I missed it. So I'm sorry I missed out, but man, yoga's been life savior for me for the last 6 weeks. So that's what
I love that.
grateful for.
Awesome. Jess, what are you grateful for?
So tonight, just like how the acorn leads to the oak tree forest and all future oak tree forests, I am grateful for our technology pioneers, the people that made the computer chips, people that wrote the first code, our Silicon Valley pioneers, every single person that led up to this very moment on a Zoom call with all of you. Because during COVID, not being able to go out and, be with my people in the reggae community and see live music and everything, it's been really, took a while, but it's been tough, but because of technology, I'm able to build my website. I'm able to talk to you guys. I'm able to get support and be here and experience this with you. So tonight I am thankful for all of the technology pioneers.
Awesome. I love that. How about you, Laura?
I am grateful that you guys let me cry on your shoulders tonight. And you
Always.
supported me. And given me hope again. And I have a thing on my phone that's called Brainy Quote. And the quote for today is, "Our happiness depends on wisdom all the way," by Sophocles. And that just seemed like a very nice one for today. For our happiness and our wisdom.
Boom. I'm a fan. I like it. Lydia, put on your camera. I'll read your thing, but you should put it on. This is my mother-in-law. She's friends with Laura on Facebook now. They're like BFFs. It's fine. All right, I'll read it while she figures it out. She says, "Thankful for being here, everyone. These campfires have been so touching for me. Many great words and stories, etc. from everyone. Thankful for Sydney and Barry for being there and being safe. I love you all. Tight hugs." She says she has her jammies on. Oh, okay. Well, so do I. So it's fine. All right, then. If nobody else has anything to share, then a couple updates for what we've got going on. Tomorrow, this is one of the episodes I've been looking forward to since the beginning of time on this. So tomorrow we have Dr. Tama Bryant-Davis, and she is a licensed psychologist. She's an ordained minister and a sacred artist. So guys, if you don't already follow her on Instagram, she's Dr.Tama, Thema. It looks like Thema, but it's pronounced Tama, like Tama Lion. And she's also on Twitter. This woman posts just nuggets of gold, especially in these times that we find ourselves in. And I am just so thrilled to have her here tomorrow. We also have the Hiking My Feelings family first episode, which is Becca, who is the first person to use the hashtag after I started claiming Hiking My Feelings. Because when I wrote that blog post and had this realization that I was hiking my feelings instead of eating and drinking my feelings, the first thing I did, marketing instincts, was has anybody used this hashtag? Is the Instagram handle available? Can I buy a URL? And all of those were available. Nobody had ever said hiking my feelings before I said hiking my feelings, which blew my mind. And I felt like I was kind of alone on an island. And then 5 or 6 days later, this wonderful woman, Becca, who I've been connected with digitally since 2008, posted that she was hiking her feelings. And I was because I checked the hashtag thing again, and I was oh, it's somebody other than me. And there's this woman with her dogs and they live in Reno. Holy crap, what is happening? So it's the Hiking My Feelings first episode. So we're doing, it's Becca. She was the first one to use the hashtag. Pete Olson, who was the first, that was the first podcast I was on, was him and Travis's podcast. And he was the first person to ask about the process for Hiking My Feelings. So we were hiking and he was like, so Sydney, like, what's the hiking my feelings process? And I was like, oh, baby, it's just like so organic. There's no real process. Like, it's just something I do. And like, I'm just like figuring out my feelings. And he was like, um, I'm gonna respectfully call bullshit. Like, you clearly went through some stuff on that trail. I need you to figure out what the process is and tell the world. And I was like, oh, okay. So I did, and here we are. We also have Ash, who was the first person to ask a question at my first talk on my REI speaking tour. And she just stood up and she was like, hey, so like, you talk about all your friends leaving a legacy. What's your legacy? And I was like, I'm not ready to answer that question. I thought you were going to ask me about part of my story. I just talked about myself for an hour. I don't know what my legacy is. So she was also the first person to join one of our group hikes as well. So you met Ash on the first episode. She was supposed to be hiking the PCT right now, but COVID ruined those plans for her. So I'm really excited to have Ash back. And also Miss Laura was the first person to buy the book. I was in Asheville, North Carolina. I put it up as a pre-sale on October 30th. Was like the day that I was launching it. And I didn't know if I'd have a good enough internet connection to like make the website part live the next day when it was supposed to go. So it was right after my Asheville talk. I was at the REI store. I was like sitting at this little desk and I was just like, boop, okay, it's available. And then I woke up and like, or actually it was like right before I went to bed because I was up late because I was so excited because it was a great talk and that's how it happens. And like right before I went to bed, it said Squarespace order received. And I was like, is this what I think it is? Cause like, we're not selling a lot on the website. Is it a book? Did somebody buy the book? And I was like, somebody bought the book. And I was like, Laura Bingaman, I don't know who you are, but you're in Colorado and I love you. And then I was like, oh my God, I do know who you are. We met on tour. Holy shit. Like, it was just like the coolest thing ever. So I'm really excited to have everybody here tomorrow. And it's just going to be like one big cuddle puddle of hiking my feelings awesomeness with all the family members. And yeah, so that's the plan, Stan. Update on Blaze Your Own Trail to Self-Love. We've got 10 people signed up. Guys, like I literally thought it would be like 4. So we've got 10 and I'm pretty stoked about it. And for anybody that's watching that might be interested in joining us, last night, we had everybody kind of go around that is signed up and talk about it. So check out the episode from Campfire number 10. It's at like the 1 hour and 28 minute mark or something is where we start talking about it. And for anybody that is impacted financially right now, whether that's COVID or you're just in a hard time period, if you go to the website and you read it and you're like, oh my God, I want to be a part of this, but I just can't swing it financially. We are offering scholarship spots and we are open to doing bartering and trading because I am a firm believer that everybody should have access to this as much as possible. So as we apply for more grants and as we get more financial support to where we can subsidize those costs, we will. But for our first run of this program, we have 5 scholarship spots available. And we're also willing to work with you if you have skills that you'd like to bring to the organization in exchange for doing the course. So that's really all I got. Am I forgetting anything, Mr. Williams? You want to come say hi to Carlos and wave bye for everybody else? Barry says hey.
Hey, Carlos. Good to see you, man. Hey, everybody.
So thank you so much for joining us. If you're on YouTube, we'll see you tomorrow at 5 p.m. Pacific for our wonderful next round of guests. And if you got something out of this, if you've been hanging out and you just like love what we got going on here and you want to throw a couple bucks our way, we are raising money for the Hiking My Feelings Wilderness Wellness Center. You can do a little donation at hikingmyfeelings.org/give. I'll put this up right now. If you want to do a one-time donation, and then if you want to do, like if you want to join our Zoom chat, if you want to ask questions, do the group gratitude circle, we've got some incredible donor exclusive offerings that we're giving away. So we've got a couple exclusive recordings from Kaleo Wassman from Pepper for Brand New Day and The Invite. Those are 2 of my favorite songs from that band. Kaleo recorded especially for us a video of those 2 songs. So you'll get that. We've got the granola recipe from Kat earlier this week. We've also got some guided meditations that we'll be sending out after Gary's episode on the 9th. So yeah, there's just all kinds of good stuff to come and get. So if you're interested in supporting us in that way, you can grab your tickets at hikingmyfeelings.org/campfire. And other than that, thank you guys so much. Be safe, use your voice, do what you do, And your story is important and you should start telling it. And if you're not sure where to start with that, then you should probably sign up for our little course and join our family. Cause like basically everybody on this screen is signed up except for Carlos, but maybe he will.
Count
So
me in.
thank-
Count me in.
Awesome. So thank you guys so much. If you're on YouTube, we'll see you tomorrow. And if you're in the Zoom chat, we will hang out for the post-show recording. So bye, everybody.